$70 is fair, my father said into his phone, selling my coffee table right in front of me. My mother didn't even look up as she peeled the sticker off my favorite lamp. Madison needs this space for the nursery, she said, treating me like a squatter in the apartment I pay rent for. They weren't just visiting. They were erasing me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I decided right then to burn it all down legally. I need to know. If you walked in on your parents selling your furniture while you were still paying the rent, would you scream? Or would you do what I did? Drop a yes if you would have burned it all down, and tell me where you are watching from. What do you think you're doing? I asked, my voice trembling just enough to sound scared. Harvey turned around, still holding the phone he was using to sell my life. He didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed that I was interrupting business. We're helping you pack, he said, stepping into my personal space. You're moving into our basement tomorrow. It's already decided. I'm not moving anywhere, I said. This is my lease. My name is on the door. Harvey smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It was the smile of a man who enjoys crushing things. If you don't vacate this apartment by Saturday, I'm going to call your boss at Global Transit. I'm going to tell him that those missing shipping containers from last quarter weren't a clerical error. I'll tell him my daughter confessed to selling inventory on the side. My blood ran cold. That was the leverage. He knew my career was the only thing I had built for myself. He knew an ethics investigation, even a fake one, would suspend my license and destroy my reputation. You wouldn't, I whispered. Try me. Olivia chimed in, smoothing a wrinkle on my sofa. Madison deserves a luxury start. You're single. You can survive in the basement. Don't be selfish, Hannah. They stood there, smug and untouchable, thinking they had cornered a helpless victim. But they made a critical error. They forgot who I am. I'm Hannah, 32 years old, and I don't just work in logistics. I manage supply chain crises for Fortune 500 companies. I reroute disasters for a living. I don't get angry when a route is blocked. I calculate a detour that costs the opposition everything. I looked at them, really looked at them, and I saw the weakness. Greed. They didn't just want the apartment. They wanted the status of the apartment without the price tag. I let my shoulders slump. I forced tears into my eyes. I let my voice crack. Okay, I sobbed. Please, don't call my boss. I'll do it. I'll leave. Harvey puffed up his chest, satisfied. Smart girl. But there's a problem, I said, wiping my eyes. I pulled out my phone and opened a PDF I had mocked up 5 minutes ago. The landlord sent this yesterday. The building was just bought by a private equity firm. They are raising all rents to market rate starting next month, $4,500. Olivia gasped. We can't afford that. Madison doesn't have that kind of money. I know, I said, leaning in, lowering my voice like a conspirator. But look at the fine print. Existing tenants are grandfathered in at $2,500. If I break the lease, the next tenant pays full price. But if I keep the lease in my name, and illegal sublet to you, the rent stays low. I watched the greed wash over their faces. They thought they were getting a steal. They thought they were cheating the system. I can do that for you, I said, selling the lie. But I need to recoup my costs. I paid for all this furniture. I paid the deposits. If you want the keys and the cheap rent, you have to buy me out. $18,500. Cashier's check. Harvey narrowed his eyes. That's a lot of money. It's cheaper than paying market rate rent for a year, I countered. Take the deal, or I call the landlord right now and cancel the lease. Then you get nothing. They looked at each other. They did the math. They saw the discount, not the trap. Fine, Harvey grunted. William is selling his truck tomorrow. We'll have the money. I nodded, hiding the cold satisfaction blooming in my chest. They weren't just stealing my home anymore. They were buying a ticket to their own financial funeral. I spent the next 3 days becoming the perfect architect of their destruction. I didn't just let them pack my life away. I helped them do it. I folded my own clothes into boxes marked for donation. I wrapped my grandmother's china in bubble wrap and handed it to Madison, who was sitting on my counter eating my yogurt, pointing a manicured finger at what she wanted kept and what she wanted gone. Be careful with that, Madison said around a mouthful of strawberry. William hates chipped plates. Of course, I said, taping the box shut with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. This was the Trojan horse strategy. In my line of work, we call it facilitating the error. If you push back against a chaotic force, it fights harder. If you remove the friction, it accelerates right off the cliff. I knew that by helping them, by being submissive and helpful, I was feeding their ego. Arrogant people don't check the fine print. They don't call the landlord to verify the lease. They are too busy high-fiving themselves for breaking you. I was making them feel so victorious that they stopped looking at the ground beneath their feet. As I taped up a box labeled Madison's Nursery filled with my design books that she planned to throw out, I let my mind drift back to last year. It was the fuel I needed to keep my hands steady. Last winter, Harvey had called me in a panic. He needed $15,000 for emergency heart surgery copays. I drained my savings. I wired the money within an hour, because I was a good daughter. 2 weeks later, I saw the photos on Facebook. There was no surgery. There was a new fishing boat sitting in his driveway, christened the Olivia. When I confronted him, he laughed. He told me I should be happy he was enjoying his retirement. He told me I could always make more money. That memory hardened my resolve like concrete. Taking $18,500 from William wasn't theft. It was a refund. It was a reimbursement with interest for every time they had used my loyalty as a line of credit. William was collateral damage, sure. But he was the one financing their entitlement. He was buying into their delusion that they could just take what wasn't theirs. "I knew you would see reason, Hannah," Olivia said, walking in with a clipboard. She was already planning where to put the crib. "You don't need all this space. It was selfish of you to keep it this long, really, but I'm glad you finally grew up and decided to help your family." "You're right, Mom," I said, stacking the final box by the door. "I was being selfish. I just want Madison to be happy." "Well, she will be," Olivia sniffed, running a hand over my granite countertops. "Once we get rid of this awful paint color." They were so busy measuring drapes and critiquing my taste that they didn't notice I was packing my important documents into my car, not the moving truck. They didn't notice I wasn't saving anything for the basement. They were drunk on power, and I was the bartender pouring them one last shot before the bill arrived. It was 24 hours before move-in day, and I was standing in my kitchen waiting for the executioner, or rather, the financier. William arrived at 6 o'clock sharp, looking like a man walking to the gallows. He had sold his beloved truck that morning. I knew because I'd checked his Facebook page. He stood in my entryway, shifting his weight from foot to foot, clutching an envelope. Harvey and Olivia were flanking him like bodyguards, ready to muscle the deal through. "I have the money," William said, his voice thin. "But, look, Hannah, can we do half now and half next month? The baby needs a crib, and I'm completely tapped out." I didn't even blink. The deal was full payment up front. $18,500. That covers the furniture buyout and the lease equity. Harvey stepped forward, his face darkening. "Don't be greedy, Hannah. We're family. You know he's good for it. Just sign the sublease papers and give us the keys." "I'm not being greedy, Dad. I'm being a landlord," I said, keeping my voice flat. "The building management requires full deposit and buyout funds to transfer the grandfathered rate. If I don't have the full amount by 5 p.m., the deal is void." "You're lying," Harvey sneered. "You just want to squeeze him." "Okay," I said. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and unlocked the screen. "I'll call the property manager right now. I'll tell him the deal fell through, and he can list the unit at market rate tomorrow morning. $4,500 a month. Good luck with that." I started dialing. I didn't hesitate. I let my finger hover over the call button just long enough for the panic to set in. "No!" Madison shrieked from the hallway. She waddled into the room, her face flushed with entitlement and hormones. "William, just give her the money. I am not losing this apartment because you're being cheap. Give it to her." William looked at Madison, then at Harvey, then at me. He was trapped. He reached into the envelope and pulled out a cashier's check. His hands were shaking. "Here. It's all of it." He tried to hand it to me, but I didn't take it yet. I held up a hand, put it on the counter. He dropped it. I picked it up, holding it to the light. It looked real. But in my world, you don't trust. You verify. "1 second, I said. "Are you serious?" Olivia scoffed. "It's a cashier's check. Do you think we forged it?" "I think trust is a luxury I can't afford anymore," I replied. I put my phone on speaker and dialed the bank's automated fraud verification line. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the electronic beep of the keypad as I entered the check number and the amount. We stood there for 10 agonizing seconds, listening to the hold music. Harvey glared at me with pure hatred. Madison looked at the floor. William looked like he was going to be sick. Then, the robotic voice filled the room, loud and clear. "Check number 4402. Verified. Amount. $18,500. The sound of that robotic voice was the sound of the trap snapping shut. It was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. "Okay," I said, ending the call. I folded the check and slid it into my back pocket. Payment accepted. I pointed to the stack of papers on the island. The fake sublease agreement I had typed up on my laptop the night before. "Sign here, here, and here, and the apartment is yours." William signed his name with a heavy hand. He didn't read the clauses. He didn't notice that the landlord listed on the document was an LLC I had created online for $50. He just signed his life away. "Pleasure doing business with you," I said. "I'll see you tomorrow for the key handover." They left feeling like they had won. They thought they had bullied me into submission. They didn't realize they had just bought a ticket on the Titanic after it had already hit the iceberg. The next morning, the loft smelled like cheap champagne and victory. My family was already there, pacing the empty hardwood floors like they owned the place. Because in their minds, they did. Olivia was holding a tape measure against the floor-to-ceiling windows, loudly discussing which custom drapes would best block out the city view she hadn't paid for. Madison was spinning in circles in the center of the room, rubbing her belly, lost in a fantasy where she was the queen of Chicago real estate. "I'm going to run the final box down to my car," I announced. Nobody answered. They didn't care where I was going, as long as I was going. I took the elevator down to the lobby alone. The building was quiet. It was Saturday, and most residents were out, unaware that in 14 days, their leases would be terminated too. But I wasn't waiting 14 days. I walked over to the steel box mounted on the wall next to the mailroom. Secure key return. I pulled my magnetic key fobs out of my pocket. These were the only things that granted access to the building's front door, the elevators, and the parking garage. Without them, you were a ghost. I held them up to my phone camera and hit record. Unit 4B. Vacating early per the cash for keys agreement. I dropped the fobs into the slot. Clink. That sound was worth $20,000. That was the deal I'd signed with the developer last week. They wanted the unit empty early to start the demo for the hotel conversion. They paid a premium for speed. So, I had successfully sold the same apartment twice. Once to the developer for $20,000, legally, and once to my family for $18,500, punitively. $38,500. That was the price of my severance package from this family. I stopped the recording and pocketed my phone. Then, I took the stairs back up to the 4th floor because I could no longer use the elevator. It was a long climb, but every step felt lighter. When I walked back into the unit, the mood was euphoric. Harvey was popping a second bottle of sparkling wine. William was leaning against the wall, looking relieved that the transaction was over. "You're still here?" Olivia asked, not looking at me. "I thought you left. Just saying goodbye," I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the 2 silver mechanical keys. These opened the deadbolt to the unit door, and nothing else. They wouldn't open the lobby. They wouldn't call the elevator. Once that heavy fire door slammed shut behind me, my family would be sealed inside a unit that technically no longer had tenant access rights. "Here," I said, tossing them to William. He caught them with both hands, like they were made of gold. Finally, Madison sighed. "God. Hannah, you really dragged this out." "It's a process," I said, backing toward the door. "But it's done. The lease is yours. The furniture is yours. Enjoy the view." I looked around the empty loft one last time. It had been my sanctuary. Now, it was just a cage, and the animals were already inside. "We will," Harvey said, raising his plastic cup. "Now get going. We have decorators coming at noon." "Don't let the door hit you," Olivia added, flashing a sharp, triumphant smile. "I won't," I promised. I stepped out into the hallway and pulled the heavy steel door shut. I heard the lock click. I stood there for a second, listening. I could hear their muffled laughter through the door. They were celebrating their win. They were toasting to their cleverness, to their ability to bully the weak one into submission. They had no idea they were standing in a demolition zone. I walked to the stairwell and didn't look back. No sadness, just numbers. I checked my bank balance as I went down. It looked beautiful. This wasn't an exit. It was a liquidation. The lobby was too quiet. The kind of silence that comes before a storm. My heels snapped against the terrazzo, and the old fear tried to crawl back in sweaty palms, racing thoughts. Did I leave a trail? A receipt with my name? Could William stop payment at the last second? Paranoia is the tax you pay for revenge. By the mailboxes. My heart hammered. But I still had one final task. I pulled out a single crisp page, unfolded it, and smoothed it against the glass vestibule door. The one they'd have to pass to get their mail, meet delivery, or leave. It wasn't my note. It was a photocopy I'd kept hidden for 3 months. Cook County Sheriff's Office Notice of Eviction and Lockout. Date: October 14. Reason: demolition. 14 days. Not for me, I was already gone, but for the squatters upstairs toasting with champagne. I taped it at eye level. Official. Lethal. Down in the garage, the air smelled like exhaust and concrete. I got into my car, hands clumsy on the keys, and started to breathe again. Buzz. Dad. My stomach dropped. He knows. I answered anyway, because fear wants certainty. Hello? You forgot the laundry room key. Harvey snapped. No greeting. Just a demand. The fob doesn't work. They needed the physical key. Relief hit so hard it almost made me sick. He didn't know. He was standing in a condemned apartment he'd just paid $18,500 for panicking about laundry. I don't have it, I said. Must have packed it. Ask the landlord Monday, he grumbled. Insulted me out of habit. Same old control game. Still thinking the board was intact. Yeah, I said, smiling in the dark. I guess I am. Bye, Dad. I hung up, started the engine, and reversed shaking. But the good kind now. Survival shaking. I drove toward the exit ramp. Daylight. Freedom. Then a shadow cut across the light. A black Ford F-150 slid across the top of the ramp and blocked the exit. My father's truck. I hit the brakes hard. The belt locked against my chest. Harvey jumped out, no laundry in sight. A tire iron in his hand. And his eyes were on me. He didn't look like my father. He looked like a man who'd just realized the trap had closed. He'd seen the notice. Now he knew. He didn't argue. He swung. Crack. The tire iron slammed into my window. The glass didn't explode, it spiderwebbed into white fractures, holding together while turning his face into a jagged mosaic. Open the door, he roared. Give me the money. He raised the iron again. In psychology, this is an extinction burst. When a manipulator feels control slipping, they escalate, hoping fear will restore obedience. It isn't strength, it's panic in the shape of violence. He hit again. The glass bowed and sprinkled tiny shards onto my lap. I could have floored it, rammed my way out, made it a messy accident. No. I needed it clean. I needed it to be a crime. So I lifted one finger and pointed at the windshield. The dashcam's red light blinked. Recording? He froze. Then I raised my phone to the broken glass so he could see it clearly. Zoe, my thumb hovering over the call. I met his eyes through the shattered web and mouthed one slow word. Treason. The rage didn't disappear, but the math finally landed. Camera. Assault. Trespass. A locked garage. A tire iron in his hand. He lowered it. Shoulders sagging, he backed away like the weapon had appeared without his permission. He climbed into the truck, reversed hard, and cleared the ramp. I didn't wait. I hit the gas and drove into the blinding afternoon sun, not stopping until the Chicago skyline was a gray smear in my mirror. 3 hours west, the city fell away into fields and open sky. I pulled into a gravel drive in a town without even a Starbucks. The house wasn't a luxury loft, just a small, weathered cottage. But I bought it in cash. The $20,000 from the developer and the $18,500 from William covered the foreclosure and left enough for repairs. My family financed my escape. I didn't stay to watch the fallout, but I heard what happened on October 14th at 8 a.m. The sheriff's deputies arrived on time. My family argued, waved their fake paperwork, screamed about rights, none of it mattered. The demolition order was a court mandate. They were escorted out with only what they'd boxed themselves. William's money? Gone. No refunds. No mercy. Now he and Madison are living in Harvey's basement, the damp one with the tiny windows. The exact space they once measured for me. I changed my number. Deleted my social media. I'm a ghost to them now. I'm sitting on my porch with a mug that survived the move. Listening to wind in the trees. The only thing I own is my freedom. And it's the most expensive thing in the world. They wanted my home. I gave them exactly what they deserved. An empty room. And a lesson in logistics. If you've ever had to outsmart your own blood to survive, share this story.